The night the door closed on me, I didn't just lose entry into a room. I lost my place in the family I once believed would always stand by me. I remember the scent of expensive perfume and the soft hum of laughter echoing through the golden-lit hall. It was my cousin Layla's engagement party, the kind of event that dripped with luxury, chandeliers that seemed to hold the stars themselves, and guests who measured worth by the price of a gown or the brand of a watch. And there I was, Maya, the quiet one, the girl with a small job, plain shoes, and dreams too big for the space I was allowed to occupy. "Don't stand there," my aunt hissed when she saw me near the center table. "You're blocking the photographer's view of the real guests." I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. I was just waiting for— "Waiting?" She laughed, a sharp rehearsed sound. "Maya, dear, you're always waiting. Waiting for luck, waiting for love, waiting for someone to lift you up. People like us don't wait. We move." I felt the stares. My cousin Layla's friends smirked, whispering behind manicured hands. One of them muttered, "She still works at that tiny cafe, right?" Another giggled. "Bless her heart. She thinks she belongs here." I swallowed the humiliation like a bitter pill, forcing a small smile. "I'm happy for you, Layla," I said softly, handing her a small wrapped box. It was a modest gift, a handmade necklace I had saved up for weeks to buy. She looked at it, then laughed without even unwrapping it. "Oh, Maya, you're still giving gifts from thrift stores?" Her laughter was joined by others. That was the moment. The moment I felt something inside me burn. Not rage, not hate, but a sharp, silent determination that settled deep within my chest. I excused myself before tears could betray me. Outside, the cool night air met my trembling breath. The city lights blinked like indifferent eyes. I stood there in the parking lot, holding the remnants of my pride, and whispered to myself, "One day, I won't have to explain who I am. They'll see it. But words are cheap, dreams, even cheaper when your pockets are empty." The next morning I packed my things, 2 suitcases and a heart full of bruises, and left the small room I rented near my aunt's house. No one called, no one stopped me, no one even noticed. For months, I struggled. I took on 3 jobs, waitress by day, assistant by evening, online business student by night. I slept less and dreamed more. My hands ached, my eyes burned, and sometimes, when exhaustion broke me down, I'd hear my aunt's words echo in my mind. "People like us don't wait. We move." So I moved, I learned, I failed, I started again. And slowly, piece by piece, the girl they mocked began to vanish. In her place grew a woman who stopped apologizing for her dreams. I began a small online business, selling homemade jewelry inspired by the very necklace they had once laughed at. At first, it was barely enough to pay rent. But then came an order, then another. A social media influencer wore one of my pieces and tagged my brand. Within a year, I had a name, Maven by Maya. Within 2, I had a company. Within 5, I had an empire quietly blooming behind a corporate veil none of my family even knew existed. But every time I passed a luxury building, I remembered that hall, the chandelier lights, the laughter, the humiliation. I didn't want revenge then. I just wanted peace. Yet fate has a strange way of giving closure. Not when you beg for it, but when you've already learned to live without it. And years later, when I saw an invitation arrive on my desk, embossed in gold, bearing my cousin Layla's new charity gala, hosted at the Crystal Verge Tower, my lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. Because that building, the one she rented for her grand event, belonged to me. Maya stood at the wide glass window of her penthouse office, the city shimmering below like a restless sea of lights. She could see everything, cars crawling like sparks, towers glittering like dreams she once thought belonged only to others. Sometimes she still couldn't believe that she was here, that the same girl who once stood outside a hall, clutching a cheap necklace, was now the woman who owned half the skyline she was staring at. It hadn't come easily. Every light down there was paid for in pieces of her. Sleepless nights, skipped meals, missed birthdays, silent tears falling on the keyboard at 3 a.m. Her success wasn't a straight road. It was built from bruises, betrayal, and the kind of loneliness that could hollow out even the strongest hearts. After leaving her aunt's neighborhood, Maya had spent the first year fighting to survive. She sold jewelry from her rented room, packaging each piece with trembling hands and handwritten notes that said, "Made with heart." There were days she couldn't afford the courier fee, days she considered giving up. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw that haul, her aunt's sneer, her cousin's laughter, the crowd's pity. That memory became her fire. When her brand Maven by Maya began to catch attention online, she didn't celebrate. She simply worked harder. She hired a small team, girls who reminded her of who she used to be, quiet, underestimated, full of dreams. She taught them not only how to craft jewelry but how to craft dignity, even when the world refused to hand it to you. Then came the deal that changed everything. A luxury brand approached her for a collaboration. They wanted her unique designs, elegant, raw, filled with emotion. She negotiated smartly, hiding her nervousness behind the calm she had learned from years of pretending to be unaffected. That deal gave her financial independence, and soon after, she started investing in real estate, one building at a time. No one knew that the quiet jewelry designer had turned into a strategic investor. Her company operated under a different name for property ventures, Orion Estates. Every purchase, every signature, was another silent step toward power. Sometimes, when she walked through the marble halls of her own buildings, she'd run her fingers over the cool stone and whisper, "Remember when they told you you didn't belong here?" The walls didn't answer, but they held her secret. Despite her wealth, Maya never flaunted it. She lived elegantly but quietly, preferring silence over spectacle. She donated to women's shelters, funded scholarships, and helped small artisans rise. Success had softened her edges, but not her memory. Years passed. Her company expanded across cities. Her brand became a global name, worn by celebrities and whispered about in magazines. Still, her family never knew. She hadn't attended any family events since that night, though sometimes she'd see their names on charity lists or business pages, clinging to their old wealth and reputation, unaware that the girl they mocked had surpassed them all. One morning, as she sat in her office sipping her black coffee, her assistant entered with a golden envelope. "It's an invitation, Ms. Maya," she said, "from a charity event at the Crystal Verge Tower." Maya smiled faintly, recognizing the name instantly. The Crystal Verge was one of her prized properties, a building she had bought under Orion Estates, the same building where she had once stood outside years ago, watching people like her aunt and cousin walk past her as if she were invisible. She opened the invitation slowly. Her cousin Layla's name was printed at the top in glossy letters. Hosted by Layla and Victor Lawrence for the Hope Foundation Gala. For a moment, Maya said nothing. She simply looked at the card, her expression unreadable. Then, setting her cup down, she said quietly, "Confirm my attendance." Her assistant blinked in surprise. "You're going to the gala?" "Yes," Maya said softly. "It's time." That night, when she returned home, she stood before the mirror for a long while. The woman looking back at her was unrecognizable, confident, composed, untouchable. But beneath that poise lived the same heart, the same girl who once walked away from humiliation with trembling hands. This wasn't about revenge, she told herself. It was about presence, about walking through the same kind of door that had once closed on her. Only this time she owned it. She chose a simple black gown, elegant but modest, a quiet contrast to the extravagance she knew would surround her. No diamonds, no glitter, just grace. As she laid the invitation on her dresser, she whispered under her breath, "You told me I didn't belong. Let's see who belongs now." The date was set. The gala would be held the following weekend at the Grand Hall of the Crystal Verge, the one with marble floors, velvet ropes, and the VIP entrance guarded by men in suits. Maya had walked away once in silence. This time, she would arrive in silence, and the silence itself would be loud enough to shake their world. The night of the gala shimmered like a diamond under the city lights. Luxury cars lined the red-carpeted entrance of the Crystal Verge Tower, flashes from cameras painting the marble walls in bursts of white and gold. The building stood tall and proud, a symbol of wealth, power, and prestige. Guests in glittering gowns and crisp tuxedos stepped out of their cars, greeted by polite nods and elegant smiles. And then, among them, came Maya. Her black gown flowed like quiet firelight, her hair pinned back in a sleek twist, her expression calm, almost serene. She wasn't here to make a statement. She didn't need to. Her very presence, her composure, the way she carried herself, that was enough. The moment she stepped out, the murmurs began. Some guests recognized her face from magazines. The visionary designer behind Maven by Maya, the woman whose company had reshaped modern luxury with soul. But her relatives didn't. A few feet ahead, Layla stood at the very important person entrance, surrounded by reporters and guests. She looked dazzling in a silver gown, laughing, tossing her hair, performing charm like an art. Her husband, Victor, hovered beside her, shaking hands with business associates. When Layla's eyes caught Maya approaching, her laughter froze for a moment. She blinked, as if seeing a ghost from a life she had buried long ago. Then, that same familiar smirk crept across her lips, the one Maya had seen years ago at her engagement party. "Well, look who's here," Layla murmured loudly enough for others to hear. "Maya, you actually got an invite?" "How unexpected." Maya met her gaze calmly. "Good evening, Layla." "Oh, sweetheart," Layla cooed, tilting her head with mock sympathy. "You do realize this is a VIP-only event, right? It's not exactly open to the public." She glanced at Victor, then at the security guard standing beside the red rope. "You see, these things are for certain people." Maya's lips curved in a faint, unreadable smile. "And what kind of people would that be?" Layla laughed, tossing her hair back. "People who belong. You know, not baristas, not small business owners playing dress-up." A few guests chuckled awkwardly, not knowing how to react. Maya said nothing. Her silence unnerved them. Then, as she stepped closer to the very important person entrance, one of the security guards moved aside politely, but Layla, feeling her control slip, raised a hand sharply. "She's not a guest," Layla said coldly. "Just push her aside." The words fell like ice on glass. The guard hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Everyone nearby turned to look. The moment stretched long and painful, like a wound reopening. Maya stood still, her eyes calm, her breath even. She didn't flinch. The head of security turned slowly toward Layla, his voice steady, respectful but firm. "We would, ma'am," he said, "but she owns the building." The silence that followed was absolute. Layla blinked. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Victor looked around, confusion flickering into shock. The crowd murmured, whispers rippling through the line like wind through leaves. Maya didn't move. She simply stood there, letting the truth do the talking she never needed to do. The guard stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome, Ms. Maya," he said. "We've been expecting you." He unhooked the red rope and gestured gracefully for her to enter. Every flash of the camera turned toward her. Every eye followed her silent walk up the steps. The marble gleamed beneath her heels, and the sound of them, soft, confident, echoing through the corridor, was the sound of everything she had built from the ground up. Layla's face was pale. She stammered something that got lost in the murmurs. "Wait, what do you mean she owns it?" The head of security replied simply, "Aryan Estates. She's the founder. This is her property." It hit like thunder. Layla looked as if the floor had vanished under her. The smirk that once mocked turned into an expression of pure disbelief. Maya turned once, just for a moment, her eyes meeting Layla's. There was no gloating in them, no cruelty, only quiet grace, the kind that made her silence sharper than any words. Then she turned back and walked into the grand hall, her head high, her heart steady. Inside, the event organizers rushed to greet her. "Ms. Maya, it's an honor to finally meet you in person," one of them said, handing her a glass of champagne. "Your presence makes this night truly special." She thanked them softly, accepting the drink. Behind her, she could feel the whispers growing louder, her name being spoken not as a joke, but as a symbol. The girl who was once told to step aside was now the woman everyone stepped aside for. As the music swelled and crystal lights shimmered above, Maya glanced at the marble pillars, the golden chandeliers, the polished floors. All of it built from her pain, her perseverance, her patience. She thought back to that night years ago. The laughter, the insult, the sting of being unwanted. And now, here she was, standing in the very heart of a world that once told her she didn't belong. She didn't smile, she didn't need to. Her existence was the revenge, her silence was the closure. And as Layla finally stepped inside, trying to mask her trembling hands with a forced smile, Maya turned away and joined the crowd. Not as a guest, not as a shadow, but as the woman who owned it all. The gala shimmered in full swing, a sea of diamonds and whispered ambition. The orchestra played softly. Waiters glided across the floor with silver trays, and laughter floated beneath the chandeliers. Yet amid all the grandeur, Maya moved like calm among chaos, unhurried, untouched by the noise that surrounded her. Every now and then she caught glimpses of Layla from across the hall. Her cousin was trying desperately to maintain her social charm, her laughter brittle, her smile tight around the edges. But her eyes betrayed her. They darted toward Maya again and again, haunted by disbelief. When the event host approached Maya, bowing slightly, his tone was filled with reverence. "Ms. Maya," he said, "it would be an honor if you could say a few words. Your presence tonight has truly elevated this evening. Everyone would love to hear from the woman who helped make this building, and this dream, possible." For a brief moment, Maya hesitated. Public speaking had never been her goal, but something inside her whispered that this was her moment. Not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove to herself that she had outgrown everything that once broke her. She rose slowly, placing her glass on the table. As she walked to the stage, conversations faded, and eyes followed her like gravity. The lights above dimmed slightly, leaving her framed in a warm, golden glow. She stood behind the microphone, her posture elegant, her voice steady. "Good evening," she began softly. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but standing here, I feel reminded of something, of how far grace can carry us when pride can't." A hush fell over the room. Even the clinking of glasses stopped. "I wasn't born into privilege," Maya continued, her eyes drifting briefly toward Layla's table. "In fact, there was a time when I was told I didn't belong in places like this, that I should step aside and let others shine, and for a long while I believed it." She smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile. But sometimes life has a strange way of teaching us. It doesn't always give us what we want. Instead, it gives us what we need: heartbreak, rejection, humiliation. Pain can be a cruel teacher, but it's an honest one. The audience listened in silence. A few faces softened, some nodding slowly. "I learned that respect can't be bought, and worth isn't something others give you. It's something you discover quietly, when no one's watching. Success, at least to me, isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were always enough." Her voice trembled slightly, but not from fear, from memory. And if anyone here has ever been told you don't belong, or that you're not enough, I hope you remember this. Kindness will take you further than arrogance ever will. Dignity will open doors that money can't. When she finished, there was a stillness that lingered for a breath too long. And then came the applause. Not the polite kind, but genuine, rising like a wave through the hall. People stood, clapping, some with mist in their eyes. Layla remained seated, her hands trembling slightly on the tablecloth. Her husband whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. She just stared at Maya, not with hatred, but with something closer to regret. After the speech, as Maya stepped down from the stage, a few guests approached her with admiration, shaking her hand, thanking her for her words. And then, through the crowd, Layla appeared. "Maya," she began, her voice low, unsure. I didn't know. About you. About any of this." Maya turned to her calmly. "You weren't supposed to." Layla blinked, confused. We were young, and—" "It's all right," Maya said softly, cutting her off. "You don't owe me an explanation." Layla hesitated. "I just want to say, I'm sorry." Maya studied her for a moment. She saw the fear in Layla's eyes, but also the shame. It wasn't easy for someone like her to apologize. And yet, Maya felt no satisfaction in it, no rush of triumph, no need to savor her cousin's discomfort. That phase of her life was gone, She smiled, not the cold smile of victory but the warm one of release. "You don't need to be sorry for not knowing who I'd become," she said quietly. "But you should be sorry for forgetting who you should have been. Kind." Layla's lips parted, but no words came. Maya didn't wait for them. She gently placed her hand on Layla's shoulder, then turned and walked away, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Outside, the night was cool and calm. The city lights reflected off the glass walls of her tower, and she felt a quiet peace settle inside her. She didn't need revenge anymore. She had found something greater: self-worth, forgiveness, grace. Her driver opened the car door, but she paused, looking back once more at the glittering building. Behind those walls were people still chasing validation, still measuring their value in applause. She had already outgrown that world. As she slid into the back seat, she smiled to herself, not because she had won, but because she had let go. The car pulled away from the curb, the crystal verge tower shrinking in the rearview mirror, glowing like a memory she no longer needed to revisit. Maya leaned her head back and closed her eyes, whispering into the quiet night, "Some doors close to protect you, some reopen to remind you who you are." And this time, she wasn't waiting outside. She was already home,